This is an immersive experience designed to maneuver through creation and influence. Here, artworks are infused with an essence of what has inspired their creation, via sound recordings, photographs, spatial balance, and 3D elements. Make yourself comfortable, meander through the space for as long as you like. There's a chat box where you can, should I skip all of that? Maybe that's not necessarily, that's just telling people how to use it. I could read this little excerpt. Self-reliance, the conviction that for better, for worse, the universe is an impression, the sculpture and memory where one ray should fall, the utmost syllable of ourselves, of that divine idea which each of us represents.
Thank you. So where are we?
We are, let me go back here. Hold on just a second.
Sure.
I need to look up again. I think there was a quotation. So Sharada Devi. I can't remember what that quote was. This view. Full screen. Or are you able to hover and see if I had a little quotation there over that image?
Sarada
Learn to
Devi.
make the whole world your own. Okay, there. I couldn't remember what her quote was. Okay, that's all. Thanks. Learn to make the whole world your own.
Tell me more about this. It looks like what I'm seeing is a figure of a woman with a shawl over her head with a red border, and it's painted onto a plaster wall, and some of the plaster on the right is fading, so a little bit in the middle of her face and off to the right side, and you can see different paint and mural underneath.
Yeah, this is actually a wall mural from Kolkata of Ma Shara Devi. There was a quote, oh, now I've already forgotten what that quote was that we just read, about making the whole world your own. But basically, this was a wall mural in Kolkata. Learn to make the whole world your own. And I thought that was a really great introduction into entering this space. She was the wife, or not the wife, actually, a consort of from Krishna, who was somebody really renowned here in this part of the world where I live in. And I created a space, the plaster on the sides, this blue with the black border trim. These are paint colors that are very common where I live. So the details, textures, colors, they're all ways to sort of pull out memory and some feeling of the space that I'm immersed in right now.
Right, and we're in this open structure with the same sort of red clay floor and ceiling with some skylights in it, and I can see some chairs and like a woven little awning up above, and behind us is like a rolling sea with some stepping stones on it.
Yeah, actually the box that you just went behind, that was a live streaming box. So I would have scheduled live screenings, maybe riding my bicycle through the village or listening to a bow performance. So I would announce the time and people could log in and watch whatever I was doing at that time on the live screen. I'll say upstairs where you notice those trees and the grass mat, not trees, the chairs. These chairs actually look almost identical to the chairs that were in my studio at the time. And that grass mat actually is one of my floor mats at home. This is sort of my pandemic level of the world. So this is a short film that I created during the pandemic. It's called Inside April. And that was created within the first full month of lockdown in India. And so to the left and to the right are just some other images that were created related to health, life, death. And behind is an animated GIF of a sculpture that I created during the pandemic. There are little details, this little monkey. Oh yeah, that's the sculpture. So this was a self-portrait of myself because I spent during lockdown so many days sitting in that position, just staring out the window without there being a whole lot to do. So everything on this level is sort of related to lockdown. At that time, I was in Kolkata, India.
And what is the material for this sculpture? It's, I mean, this is like a black and white flickering GIF of the like a cross-legged figure like rotating around, and it's pretty like low resolution, like it was carved out of stone or maybe made out of clay.
It's made out of clay from a neighborhood, a community called Kaligat. It's not a refined clay. It's not filtered very well. So you can see the color. It's really rough. It's not a precious material by any means.
Thank you. That's really cool that you gathered the clay yourself.
Well, technically, the man from Kaligat, he collected it for me.
But I mean, it's really
Um,
cool that it comes from your geographic region at least.
yeah,
And I really like the photography in each of these. Um, like this looks like a little watercolor, but I think the original scale must have only been like what, like 3 by 5 inches?
maybe, yeah, about that, possibly a little bit larger. This is a zeotite print, which is a handmade print. And then I did some watercolor pigment on top of that, and then embroidery.
Oh,
This is,
yeah, I was wondering what that shape in the center is. It looks like a cross on top of a kind of plinth or obelisk in the foreground, and it looks kind of woven. And then there is sort of a grassland scene with some like white mountains in the background and a dark sky.
yeah, this is actually a gravestone that I had photographed a few years prior in New Mexico at a cemetery. And it was during lockdown that look, you were asking earlier that I revisited the work, recontextualized that, and the embroidery. Without going too deep, I have some other projects. The embroidery looks sort of like this type of mud dauber wasp nest with these little
Hmm.
holes in it. So that is what's going on there.
And this one looks like an X-ray of a female chest with these sort of spheres that are dark, that are like whiter on either side of the ribs with these things like poking in. They look like pins almost.
Yeah, this actually is a digital composite of definitely an X-ray of the chest region, and then of all things, the other photograph is a fashion show in Kolkata with these crazy sci-fi outfits and futuristic lighting and smoke. And I overlaid that with the X-ray. Again, during the time of the pandemic, I was sort of recontextualizing and thinking about lungs and breath um, and then space and all sorts of things, not necessarily a precise meaning, but a lot of influences um, put into one piece.
Yeah, I mean, I like that I mean, it's to have sort of a digital composite on one side and a very like analog process on the other side. And yeah, I wanted to touch a little on the aesthetic of the film, even if we're not going to describe the whole thing, but it's a really beautifully photographed black and white, very, very rich. And there are all of these kind of static scenes of light coming through windows or like raindrops on the ground. We're sort of looking at the front door of something, and it's the images are, or the shots are shifting every like 3 or 4 seconds, I think.
That's really interesting. I had a film screening just last week at my studio of this because it marked the 3-year anniversary of lockdown. And somebody had mentioned about the editing, and I was talking, yeah, 3 to 5 seconds. I came from a news editing background. And so it was drilled in my head every, 3 to 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. So I think I unintentionally approached this with a bit of that like television news editing process in my head.
That's so interesting to hear. I never would have clocked that, but that it's yeah, that really. Oh, there's a cat. We're on top of like a tin roof,
Actually
and there's a
a
cat.
monkey.
Oh my
If you can
God,
find
you're
his
so
face.
right. Oh, look at
Yeah. Yeah, where I live now, so in 2020, actually at the time that I created this, I was still living in Kolkata, but then I was by that summer, I moved to Shantiniketan, this more rural district. Is this right? Or did I create this in 2021? Maybe I created this world in 2021, now
Mm.
that I think about it. Because I have gray langurs, a lot of, they call them Hanuman here, a lot of those in my yard and at my studio. So I sprinkled a few of these, but these were a later addition. So maybe when I launched the world, I wasn't yet living there possibly. And then maybe I came back to add those in.
Aw, and he has this
No,
little red face and big eyes.
yeah, and obviously there was a limitation to the types of resources that I could get access to. The types of langurs that we have here look a little different, but that kind of gave that vibe, that essence of, some days there's just a monkey on the roof, and
It is interesting with CG assets where like if you want things from the natural world, like you want a specific tree, that's quite hard, but there are 10 billion different guns. So we're looking down off of this roof and we can see the ocean on one side and we can see kind of a dirt landscape with some grass and a little, it's not a, that's like a banana leaf tree.
it is,
And then
yeah.
there is a little cube with that looks kind of like a house or maybe a studio with these like nice wood doors and it's kind of like a mud texture.
Yeah, actually, as we're going through this world, so much is coming back. I probably should have spent more time here before we met, or maybe this is good that I'm
It's nice. I
surprised
like to
again.
witness. Yeah.
That little building is actually the facade of a rooftop, the rooftop entrance to my home in the city in Kolkata. And then the little wall along the side is actually the wall of where I currently live out in the rural district of Shantiniketan, that town. So these are elements from where I live. This is the boundary wall at my present house, and that is the rooftop entrance to my previous house. So that's the colors, the textures. I wanted all of these things in that world because these are what subconsciously influence whatever I make. So I thought it would be nice to pull some of these things together next to the artworks.
That's so nice. Yeah, I love that. Ooh, and I see a shape that I made.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that.
So we're inside of
Yeah.
this gallery now with a white corrugated ceiling. Now it's like I was like, oh, this tin roof. I had no idea what the tin roof was for, but it was for this gallery. So we have a long rectangular wall on the left side, and then there are these arches going up and then back down at an angle into a flat, slightly angled wall. And there are a bunch of different photographs and a video in here. Where should we start?
Right where you are is great. And that definitely, like what you created, that inspired this whole idea of putting an exhibition space into the world. To the left are some round circles. These are some works that I think I was adding a little after the original opening of the space. There's a process called soil chromatography, and that's basically they're basically the mineral fingerprints of dirt, of soil. I can add some silver nitrate, put it in the sunlight, and the minerals create different colors after they're
That is
exposed to the
so
sun.
cool.
Yeah, so it is a photographic process, but there's no camera that works here. It's just dirt and light sensitive chemical. Um, but I made this where I live. It's really becoming highly developed for tourism, and the area is known for these kind of romanticized red dirt roads. They're called lalmati, red earth. And the roads are getting paved over because all of the tourists are bringing their cars in and they need more space and resorts and all of this development. So I collected a jar of soil from the road behind my house as it was getting paved over. And so I created this. This is now all that's left of the original road, just these mineral fingerprints, sort of like a tree ring looking image. But besides that, those original roads now don't exist anymore. They're
Wow,
all
that's such a
all
fascinating
demolished.
process to sort of capture. the capture this sort of lost era of this land using a photographic process, but not documenting the scene visually, I think that's really special. So these look
Yeah.
very much like irises. They're these white
Mm.
circles set on what looks like kind of a linen, like a tan linen background, and they emanate from a central point in these like different rings of color. So this first one is kind of like this gold followed by this like grayish lavender type color, grayish purple, and then a darker brown ring around the outside. Um,
Yeah, and if I were a scientist, I could probably tell you what each of those colors were. This is what a farmer or an agriculturalist would use to test the fertility of soil, or you know, just to see how the land is. These actually, it's not very fertile looking to me. Usually there are a lot of zigzag patterns and different things coming up. These are actually pretty smooth, but I can't tell you what. I think the orange might be the iron content possibly, but that's just me guessing.
Yeah, that
I'm
makes
not.
sense. Yeah, I mean the gradients on these are really smooth. There are three of these in a row, by the way, and I'm in the middle one now. And this one it looks is more the shape of an eye and kind of like an almond shape. And there's kind of a swath about 120 degrees over the top with this like grayish background and a darker brown line through it. And the bottom is a smooth gradient between sort of a tan and a darker brown into the gray of like the iris area.
Yeah, and this one looks so different from the others because actually the bottom of that filter paper dipped into the liquid rather than drawing it up through the center so it could have like this capillary action dispersing out. So that's why that one has that look that's a bit different than the other two.
Oh, that's
A
so
happy
interesting. And then this last one is more of a perfect circle with two notches taken out of it towards the top, one about twice as wide as the other, like a finger wide. And then on the bottom, there's sort of like a tongue of browner grayer pigment that's cutting through like a white gradient, and then there's sort of a brown border all around it.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what happened there, if maybe my silver nitrate hadn't spread out evenly, but yeah, but there are definitely a lot of happy accidents with these. They're all created from the exact same material. It's just how does
Oh
nature
wow!
react?
So it's three different perspectives. That's really interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and this, you were just saying about photographing the landscape, the image on the right. I do have landscape photos. So this is really a digital overlay from one of these chromatographs. So I took a landscape image and digitally composited that on top of chromatographs.
Is that train coming from your side or my side?
It's coming from the film above us.
That's what I
But
like. I really couldn't because I heard it earlier and I was like, "Oh, that must be from the film," but I really
oh,
couldn't
you know
tell.
what? Actually, there is not a train in that film. Oh, I think you might. Yes, we are walking really close to a video. We could head over there. Yes,
Oh, I do want
that
to.
video is just
This
making.
the spherical photo is really cool. It looks like a regular image that's projected on a sphere, and it looks like it's inside of a soap bubble, and it's kind of like a low res JPEG, and it's in a circle inset on this gray linen pattern, kind of like we saw in the other images. But let's go over to that video.
So this is really a stop animation short film of a handmade book that I made. The handmade book itself is quite long and narrow. We're only seeing a really small at the very bottom of it. Um, and something this is kind of what I was talking about. I make very tangible, one of a kind items. So unless you were with me at my studio seeing and holding it, you really I can't. It's so hard to share. So this format let me give at least some of that experience, and it kind of created a whole new experience. It became an artwork of its own. So this is actually some stream of consciousness. A man had died on the train tracks just a few feet from me, so that's why there is the train audio in the background. And it's sort of me processing that whole event and
Yeah, I mean, that
witnessing.
sounds really traumatic.
Yeah, it really was. Like, there's a moment in there. There's just like ink smeared everywhere. So this format really allowed me to share at least part of that book. You can't read it, sit down and spend time with it like you could with a physical object, but um, again, this creates a whole new piece in a different context.
I think that's such an, yeah, because it's like the documentation in some way becomes the work, and that's kind of an operative principle maybe of what we're trying to do here.
Mm.
Um, and so what we're seeing is it's another black and white stop motion film of what seems to be like a hand-bound book on pretty grainy paper, and written on each page are these very short phrases, even sometimes only just a couple words, between two parallel lines. There's like a metal texture underlying the whole scene, and then there's some kind of movement that looks like a paint swatch that's being animated to down. So it's like your the viewer is like moving forward. I see the ink smear now,
Yeah,
and it's really just like one second or so per page. So it's hard to really grab on to any of the text. Otherwise, I would read a little for you.
exactly. And that's sort of what I was getting at, that you can't really spend time with it like you would be able to with the actual book. It's just to give an impression of what it was. So there were a few lines in this that were more important. So they have two frames, so they last a little longer. So you can grab those words. And then the others like kind of pass through more quickly. But that actually is on newspaper, blank
Oh,
newspaper. There is Kolkata is used to be at least one of the major publishing capitals of India. So there's a district called Boitakhana that I love to visit. You can get all sorts of paper and binding and printing materials. And so they have blank newspaper paper. And something that I thought was, I don't know, heartbreaking or traumatizing. I'm not quite sure what the right word is, but so this man had died, you know, just right there. And then I started researching like train track deaths in India, and just depending on who the source was, the information that was given was so, like, something said maybe something like 32 people in a year. Somebody else said like 30,000 in a year. Somebody said, the numbers were just all over the place, and they were being reported in the newspaper. So somebody like me and this man, his death didn't even show up in the news. I was Googling and searching, and the death was just, I don't know. It just, there was no mention even in the news that this life had ended from a tragic accident. Um, and that really like gutted me, and I was angry, and there were all sorts of things going on.
yeah, I mean that really makes sense with the newspaper then that it's like you're kind of creating your own bulletin. What do we have here?
This is an image. It's oh gosh, I don't know how much to tell you here and share. A lot of my work has to do with femininity and fertility. Um, I've suffered with infertility for most of my life, and um, the red, you'll see some red leaking down here that sort of symbolizes like a menstrual flow. Um, and also a little bit of mysticism. These are broken pieces from a Hindu idol. uh, I had gone, this district Kaligat, where that clay came from, it has a Kali temple there. And I had gone, and there's this tree where you can do a prayer for fertility, and you hang a red stone by a red thread on this tree. Um, and there's just all sorts of symbols and textures. I could go into this way deep, but I think I might might lose you possibly. It's pretty
Oh no,
long.
I
But
love like this is like kind of why we're here. I really want to
okay.
hear you like weave together all of the things that we're seeing.
Okay, well then I'm going to go way back a few more years to Asheville, North Carolina, and this Native American elder was at a campground I was staying at, And he was either, no, I think he was probably both, maybe a little mentally unstable, definitely like super high. And so it was just like he was giving sort of this prophecy to me here in the middle of the woods in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and he said the crows will show you the stones. And so this sort of became this puzzle that I was trying to unravel for years. Like, what are the stones? What are the crows? And I was following crows. So when I went to Kaligat, I hung a stone, and Kolkata was known, a lot of people call it the city of crows. So then I'm like, I'm in the city of crows and I'm hanging a stone and it has to do with fertility. So the crows will show you the stones that this prophecy I was given, maybe this has to do with my fertility. And what's really interesting about that, so my hormones have been all over the place for so much of my life. And I started this, I'm sorry if this is too
No,
much
I'm here for
information,
it.
but I started menstruating again when I went to India. And so just all of these really bizarre things and symbols and, like a prophecy and that's sort of all what's embedded into this, all of that was happening and going on, and some mysticism. And but then there's also science. So you'll see that maybe in some other works more about circadian rhythm. Um, but yeah, that's a bit of what this touches upon.
Thank you for sharing. I do want to talk a little more about the red stone. They're two shards of two different circular idols, and they have these really beautiful borders, like a picture frame that are like embellished in these kind of leaf patterns. And in the center, there's like a painted red disc ringed by these black beads.
Yeah,
They're each broken in half, and the two halves are facing each other.
this actually, there are other works like me recontextualizing. Um, I'm trying to see how much to explain. Um, there are different pujas throughout the year in Hinduism that celebrate different gods and goddesses. And so there are idols that are created for that holiday, for that celebration. And so a lot of them have this disc as sort of like a halo. It's sort of the
Hmm.
background behind the face of the idol. So circles are symbolic. So I took, oh, and now these idols are not as much immersed. You immerse the idol into Ganga water at the end of puja to release that spirit back into the spiritual realm. But of course, that's like really horrible for the environment as well, to have all of these chemicals and everything going into the rivers. And there are different ways around that now. It's people are becoming more aware of that, but a lot of them now, instead of going through immersion, are just, at least in Kolkata, we're getting lined up just at the edge of the street for trash collection. So there was just a whole street of idols after I think it was Saraswati Puja. And so I collected some of the broken pieces from those to kind of create that circle from two different um, idols.
It's really amazing how you incorporate all this material from your environment into your work. What's going on with this one? This one kind of looks like a digital composite. I can't tell if this white background is like plaster or like different layers of paper that have been kind of embossed. There's these two lines at the bottom, and in the center, um, there is some kind of cross-legged deity with like a hollow nose, and this like big kind of lion's mane crown and in this robe, and it's in these kind of psychedelic grayscale, kind of looks like a negative image, but it looks like it's kind of been painted onto the background.
Yeah, this is also, this is more of the likeness of Saraswati from that same puja where I collected those circles from the previous thing we saw. And I was creating some handmade photographs, these chemically processed images. So this was actually the digital negative that I used to create those prints. That's why the black and the whites are inversed. And then you lose a lot of the detail because of that. Your eyes, you have a harder time grasping onto this. So that digital negative, I then paired with paper collage. So these are torn pages There's sort of a third eye thing going on up above with like a bit of a bindi
Mm-hmm.
spot with the paper. And then the bottom, again, those are more paper. And then there's this red string. So I mentioned this story like about fertility, and the crows will show you the stones and there's red strings. Um, I also went through this phase where just a lot of like identity issues I was going through, and trying to figure out how to identify myself. I think um, like one of the, like culturally as a woman, that you take your father's name, you get married to a man, you take that name, and this whole thing, your identity is tied to your relationship with a man. And I really was struggling that, like, I still have the name of my first husband, even though I'm not tied to that individual anymore in that way. Um, so I created the symbol to be my own signature, kind of void of any of that connection. And so there's a lot of symbolism in there too, like in a mountain, and there, and that red string, the color and the material being symbolic to other parts of my journey.
And it's this this narrow arched shape in red string on the bottom right corner. And yeah, I love the third eye expression. Like sort of there's a square of paper that's basically the exact same shape as the image that's imposed on the paper right above it. That's like it's like a layer on top, and then there's a torn piece of paper that's running down the entire center, and then there's a tiny little dot in the center of that torn piece that, I mean, it doesn't look very spherical. It almost looks like a figure of some kind, like stamped onto there.
Yeah, it's really just, yeah, glued paper. And again, like really symbolizing the third eye energy space, or like a bindi. Um, and I'm really glad this is in this world, because this paper has actually gotten damaged since then. So this exists here now in a much better condition than it exists in reality.
It's been preserved in some sense.
Yes.
So we have another stop motion paper film. Now it's an entire like bound book with pages full of text that have been painted over in white. Same kind of pacing. I see it's called Self-Reliance Erasure from 2020. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah, this is from an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Self-Reliance. So it's an erasure poem that I created. This book had 3 essays. So those fully blanked out pages at the end were the other 2 essays that I didn't work with. I only worked within this self-reliance essay. So I basically created a poem out of his essay. Um, and with an erasure, it's sort of like a photograph, like, you have the whole world, but you're only selecting like this little rectangle to look at. So I'm
Mm.
looking at his whole essay and just pulling out certain words to create new meaning. Um, and self-reliance, again, this was created like in this pandemic mindset, where a lot of it had to do with isolation and being alone and an artist, and just kind of getting by on your own.
Oh, and we have another print of the broken discs up here. This is very kind of like sepia toned, and there's a lot of texture to the paper, and it's on that same linen backdrop.
Yeah, so when I had talked about this immersion that usually happens, an idol would typically at the end of this puja, this holiday period, it would go into sacred water, like a Ganga River distributary, in Kolkata at least. And then maybe a week later or whatnot, the idol would be dredged back from the river. And then it's all covered with mud, and some of the paints have come off into the water. So this is from a series where I was really trying to think about like how, because it kind of broke my heart too to see all of the idols that were lined up just on a curb, like on a sidewalk, because you know, culturally, I think they're losing something, when they're not able to follow through with their spiritual rites. but then I knew, pollution is an issue too. So kind of how do you balance that? Like the resources like water, and then, you know, traditions that are hundreds, if not thousands of years old. So what I did is I created digital photographs, and then I took those to the river and I immersed them under the water. And so there were some boatmen who worked, and we weighed these prints down with rocks, and I waited about a week and came back and pulled them out of the river. And so you're actually seeing the real mud. And it got torn. You can see like the water flow towards some of the paper. So this was sort of my way to think about how to balance these two different things, the environment and cultural space.
Yeah, I mean, I love these like photographs of photographic processes.
Mm.
We have another image in between these two videos that are facing each other. There's like a red painted, like paper embossed square on this wide square-ish stroke of blue paint that dissipates in the top in kind of a flame pattern. There's an arc of white dots around the, like, probably 180 degrees around the red square, and it's on this gray, almost looks like metal sheeting background.
It actually is. Yeah, it's metal sheeting, and that's a red stone that's been adhered to that. And this sort of semi-halo there. So this just has a lot to do with, again, like that fertility, symbolism, spirituality. So it's a three-dimensional object with that red stone that's been placed within this space.
And it's been converted into two dimensions. It's like,
Yes.
it's cool to be able to recognize some of the materials, but not recognize all of them when they've been like compressed into an image. So I'm seeing a big black sphere dotted with a bunch of white dots all around it in a somewhat grid-like but irregular pattern. Oh, I recognize this little grass disc with like a marble trim, 4 benches facing a little tree in the center. And we have another erasure poem where
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, the screen. Oh, my internet connection's unstable. Um, oh, okay, sorry, my screen locked up for about 2 minutes there.
Oh no.
But I'm here now, and now I see you've gone into a different room.
Yeah, we're inside of this sphere, and there's like another erasure poem on a black background, and then the erased text is kind of grayed out, but you can still read it. And then in the white text, you can see, "I see one star in the sky."
Yeah, so this is from actually another book project, trying to think like how could I bring words into a visual space. Um, a book project called Stray Birds. Rabindranath Tagore is the first Nobel laureate from within India, the first non-European actually to win the Nobel. And so I used a collection of poetry called Stray Birds and created erasures from that. And this is just one in particular. When I first moved to Kolkata, literally, I could only see one star in the night sky because there was so much light pollution. And so this is just kind of a world. And the sphere with all of these colored dots, this is actually a close-up detail of the lion from Durga Puja that's lit up in the street. It's sort of like a three-dimensional sculpture with all of these little LED lights all over it. So I created a night sky out of that light.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I love the way that people kind of approach like installation techniques in New Art City. Um, oh, and it's a box and it's surrounding the tree in the center. It looks really nice inside with the tree running up through it, and the box is probably about twice as tall as like the human avatar would be.
Mm. Yeah, it sort of became like a little park where you could sort of, I don't know, I didn't know like if somebody would sit down and sit on a park bench, just it just seemed like a mellow little space.
I remember making a bench for somebody once, and they were like, "Well, can you sit on it?" And I'm like, "Well, you can hover above it. Like your physical body is sitting, is it not? Unless you have a standing desk. So we have a few more cute. We're now outside, and there's this dirt texture, and we can see some cube and sphere images, and then I see a cart off in the distance, and in the fog, I see this banyan tree. I want to see the cart.
Yeah, this guy is eating up a lot of the data. I think it was like 52 megs or something. I couldn't
It
figure out
looks
how
incredible.
to.
I'm so into it.
So this is a street food called fuchka. It's one of my favorite street foods. And our neighbor Vijay, he has a fuchka cart at the top of the hill where I live now. So like I'm always going there and eating these. So they're fried puffs of pastry, basically like crunchy little balls that are hollow in the middle. So you kind of punch an opening in the top, and then you put in this mixture of mashed potatoes and chickpeas and spices and onion. And that's just one of my favorite snacks. So I thought that would be a nice little detail to add.
Yeah, and there's it's this blue tricycle bike with like a cube with that has glass walls all around it, and it's filled with these little pastries, and then there's like a clay pot with a red cloth over the top of it, and then there's another pot next to it.
Yeah, yeah, that one pot probably would have tamarind water inside if this were
Mm,
actually real and you were able to eat it. I'm kind of hungry right now thinking about it.
yum, that
Um,
sounds really good.
and then, yeah, there are a lot of banyan trees around, and they just feel very ancient and special. And then at a lot of these trees are considered sacred. And so you'll often find like a little temple in the tree, like or attached to the tree, or photos hanging or painted on the bark. So I just took a photograph and sort of embedded it in a way that felt very familiar to the space.
Yeah, it's
Um,
beautiful how you embedded this shrine into the base of the tree, and there's this kind of little white tiled area with a bunch of little incense burners and candle holders, and then there's some flowers draped on some kind of wooden sculpture. There are a few sculptures of deities, and there I see what is this little like tin, oh, it's like a tin of little salted biscuits, and there's like a plastic bottle, and then there's a big painting of another deity in the back, and it's like ringed by these translucent pink and purple like pink and blue like taffeta streamers.
Yeah, yeah. So often you would feed the god or goddess. So yeah, there'll be maybe some like sugary beverage or some sweets and mishti. So that's some of these containers are probably going into do the daily um, kind of presentation of food. And I also have to really add here that I do not come from a background of Hinduism. My husband is Hindu. And so my family, my in-laws, I'm around that, but there are a lot of things I may be using the wrong terminology. I just want to make that clear that I'm definitely not trying to appropriate or say that I've got like this deep lifelong history. This is just sort of what I've become familiar with in this phase of my life, and that's been really inspiring to me, even at a subconscious level, I'm sure. Um, but I'm pretty sure that tin of food is probably the sweets um, to feed the deity.
Thank you. Ooh, there's a train. I love trains. There's a big locomotive car with it's like dark blue with a light blue stripe, and the like livery that says BM018. Ooh, and
Yeah,
it's
you can actually
oh.
hop inside of the very first car. Oh yeah, oh maybe I put one in a few cars. Yeah, so this is just became another little exhibition space. These are just landscape views from the district that I live in. And these are sounds that I collected from some of my train journeys. So I thought, the best thing about the train is that you get to see the landscape out of these huge windows. So um, I thought this would be kind of a good place to exhibit landscape photographs.
Yeah, these are wonderful landscapes. They're all kind of foggy, pretty high contrast. We have all these like stands of trees and kind of like a swampy scene. Some animals off in the distance. Are those goats?
They are, yes.
We have a path running through an arched tree. We have a house with a beautiful, enormous tree in front of it, and this like nice metal gate. Um, what is this here? It's a little alcove with a bunch of clay figures in it. And uh, yeah, is this a yeah? What is this?
These are actually kind of gifts, offerings to God. Um, so maybe you had something that you wanted or needed in your life, maybe some surgery you want to go well, or somebody is ill. And so let's say you have your surgery and everything was great and fantastic. Now you return, and as a gift of gratitude, you bring one of these little horse sculptures as a gift of thanks to God. So they're sort of like I guess blessings that have come into fruition, is sort of what they represent, um,
And I
or
love
granted
that on either
wishes.
side there are these kind of arches, or like arched walls that follow the shape of like an elephant trunk, and there's an elephant painted on either side of them with the tusks sticking out and some embellishments.
Yeah, this was actually one of the more fancier ones that I had seen. That's why I photographed this particular one. Sometimes it might just be at the base of a tree. There's a pile of these little clay horses. But yeah, this was a little more formal space. It looked really interesting.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Ooh, and then there's a picture of the inside of a train car with this like these like wooden curved bent wood seats and like a wood interior and a huge fan on the top, and it has this really nice like amber glow to it.
Yeah, that is a tram from Kolkata, which has, I think, the oldest running tram in Asia, I want to say, but maybe I should Google that fact. But there definitely is a lot of history to this tram line, um, and there are a few still operating through the city.
We have another piece in here. It's mostly white, very kind of emissive with these, but they almost look like teeth in these two rows underneath like a gray smear.
Yeah, I really like to walk inside of this one. This is kind of a sculptural piece. These are
Ah,
two shelves that were in a gallery at an exhibition.
and they look like
Um,
they're ceramics. I can see now. It's these lines of cups. A few of them are grouped like on the top. It's like a complete line, and then they're more sparse on the bottom row.
Exactly. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is one shelf. I photographed it twice, once at the beginning of the exhibition and the other towards the end of the exhibition. So we drink our tea out of clay cups that are handmade. And instead of having paper waste or styrofoam, the clay, you just throw it away and it turns back into earth all over again. So it's a really sustainable way of drinking. But when I first moved here, I just found these cups to be so precious. I couldn't part with them. I couldn't throw them away. Um, and so then I created I contextualized this and gave people who entered this exhibition the opportunity to make a choice, like if they wanted to keep one of these cups, or if they wanted to smash it on the ground of the gallery floor. So that at the bottom is after people have come in and taken or broken a cup. But then what was disappointing is that some people weren't making the choice, because I also choice is repeated through a lot of my work. They kind of cheated. I saw a lot of people starting to, they put one cup in their bag to take home and then they took another one. So they were like kind of like stealing two experiences at once. But I really had wanted people to like make a choice. And some of these cups I had imprinted memories into. So they were from special places or moments. Maybe I'd like kind of press my lipstick into the edge of one, or there were certain things like I try to embed some memory into these as well. But
That's such an interesting interaction. I love that you incorporated a choice into it. Oh, end of the train.
oh, sorry, it's a little disoriented.
I'm I'm familiar with the disorientation. Ooh, these like semi-transparent palm trees are really cool.
Yeah, I can't remember if I got those on Adobe stock, but yeah, the transparency was I was trying to hide that, and then I thought, oh, that's kind of cool.
We have another like clay sculpture rotating on an easel on this rough paper that has some print on it in like big letters and numbers, and some of it's sort of gone away. Um, it's the same kind of stop motion technique as some previous ones we've seen, and there's some like newspaper stuffed into some of the holes in this shape. It almost looks like a beet with a bunch of holes punched into it.
Mm.
Same kind of dirty color. And there's like some twine like wrapped in and around through it.
Yeah, this actually I really wanted to do a 3D scan. This and the other sculpture, there are a few things like how do I get this three-dimensional object? But my computer was locking up every time I tried to render something in 3D from a physical object, all the photographs I had. So I thought this would be like a low-tech way of trying to capture some of that. But yeah, this is a sculpture with some metal and a page from a book. And then a wasp nest. Actually,
Ah,
that white, do you see that white
mm-hmm.
hole? Yeah,
Yeah.
so this, I did a series of work where I made sculptures of resembling wasp nests, but not quite. That's what this was. This was supposed to be a sort of wasp nest thing. But then a real wasp actually built that little white hole and nest inside of my sculpture. I couldn't believe it.
That is
So I kept it
incredible,
there.
so magical.
Yeah. I guess I worked. I guess I created what they wanted for a home.
Aw. Biomimicry at its finest. So we're going back past the banyan and the cart. Ooh, I see a floating sphere. And now we are inside of the sphere. And so there's a ring of different photographs around the center that are all square, and then on the bottom there's like it's grayed out. On the top there are these gears that are kind of distorting in the center, and they're in this like orangey purple hue. Also looks like the colors have been reversed, and all of these images are in color, but pretty sort of gray purple texture of all of these different angles of um, these different statues. There's a four-armed figure sitting on like a tiger. There are a bunch of like inverted heads, like they look like babies' heads with like a lens flare at the top and some other close-ups. I can see those heads again in this image. And then these other ones are a little bit more blown out.
Yeah, this is from a district called Kumartuli. So this is the idol making district in Kolkata. Um, and what was so great about New Art City and this three-dimensional space, this is from a roll of film. So, and the film was an experimental film, and I think it got exposed. Those are real light leaks where my film got exposed to light. And the my camera wasn't working, the advancing. So some of the frames are not lined up correctly, and you'll see this weird wave. So being able to show this in a sphere was almost like unrolling a sheet of film, because that's all rolled up. So for me to show these in any other way, I would have to break them up into individual squares, but this was almost like we are kind of inside of the roll of film, if that makes sense.
I
Um,
love the way they're misaligned. Like this like shirtless mustachioed figure with a beaded necklace is kind of slightly offset, and then there's this kind of like white sine wave that does like two cycles through it, and then there's this like really dark portion next to this street scene, and then on the right a similar phenomenon happens where you're like looking sidelong at this other shirtless figure with their hands facing each other, and raised, and then on the right side it's a lot more it's a lot more faded.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's showing like all the flaws of the film, and but in like a really magical way that looks far cooler than what I thought it would, come out like.
Yeah, this is a perfect format for it. So we have a lot more of these cube images. So there seem to be more of these immersion prints where we have like a
Mhm.
hand, we have another like statue body that's kind of cracking, um, and a human face that it really looks like it's been painted on. Um, two faces in negative, like facing each other. Um, a shadowy woman with hands pressed against her back, or I guess it's like kind of arms linked behind back with one palm kind of outstretched against this plaster background. Tell me about this series of images.
Yeah, actually, these are all from different series, but it sort of shows like the continuity of my style and interests. So the last one you showed with her hands behind her back, that's from a series called An Ocean Within Us. I was photographing for Kolkata Shanved and Free Body Project, um, where these are um, dance movement practitioners who do dance movement therapy within communities of domestic violence against women, sex trafficking survivors. And so these are the practitioners with the organization who are going through some of their movement exercises and sort of performing for the series of images. And some of the others, there was another in here from the series that was at the other end of the walkway. That was from the same group of women. This is a cracked fertility one. This is from the immersion one. So this is also from the immersion series, but I did a kantha stitch, which is a type of
Oh,
embroidery that doesn't actually repair a piece. Um, so again, these are all from different projects, but there's a lot of crossover in sort of how I see. This is another one of the dance movement practitioners.
right.
Um,
Yeah, a woman with her back arched and her hair hanging down, and arms outstretched above. And we have another monkey down here, and then there's another photograph of like a garden courtyard, um, with some other buildings in the background and a bunch of big trees. Are those roses?
those are not roses. It's a white flower on some type of a tree. I'm not sure the name. This was actually a view off my bedroom balcony. Um, so that's just an influence. I'm obsessed with riding a bicycle here, and it got stolen though. But my
Oh,
bicycle looked almost identical to this one. And I would ride out to the banyan tree, so I kind of created these things. At one point, oh, you know what? If you go through the ground underneath, there might be. Oh no, maybe I didn't. I may have turned it off. At one point, there was a photograph of my real bicycle at the real tree, but I think I switched that layer off at some point.
we got a monkey in the tree. There's a monkey sitting under the tree. And then ooh, we have this picture of like a carved out stone staircase up to another spherical image. Ah, this is the red rock hanging from this braided red string sitting on a looks like another white cloth which is on another white background.
Yeah, definitely. This one doesn't look as much like the real object as some of the others, but yeah, you can see at least the symbols that were important. That red stone, the red string. This is canvas on top of paper with some twine stitched in as well, but that's hard to see on this spherical form. But the
Oh, I
red
see
stone
that.
is the
So yeah, a
most
couple of
important.
the twine pieces down here with a little knot at the end. It's nice to sort of hear you talk about things and then kind of see them in action in other places. Ooh, another book. This is a 3D model of a book with an, is this an image or a video? I think
It's a
it's
PDF.
ah.
So you could actually go in and read a couple of, I would turn these on and then I would turn them off because I'm like, I don't know if I should share the text.
I saw
Um,
another PDF in here, and that whatever you can see in the gallery will probably be available in the catalog.
yeah, so I kind of tucked them in more hidden corners. So I thought, okay, if anybody's going to read this, they've got to be committed to the world and really be looking around, you know? Um,
Rewarding exploration.
yes, definitely.
Are there any areas that I haven't seen yet
I hid some elephants in there.
in
Um,
here?
there's another building on the other side. The elephants are behind the other way. Um, and then if you turn right, oh, you could go inside that building too. There's some things inside that building, a film, and I hid a Christmas tree in the attic. Um, the little Easter eggs here and there. And then if you turn right and go through that wall of force, the other way. Yes, keep going that way and walk through that wall. Yeah,
Ah, they're the elephants. These like really like huge stone elephants walking in a line.
yeah. There was this one village I was staying in. They told me not to go out walking past like the forest line because every morning that week, like a different villager was getting actually trampled to death by an elephant. They were, I guess, not able to find food, so they were coming out. And I don't think they were trying to. I think the elephants were probably getting spooked. It sounded like from what they were saying.
Hmm.
And their defense mechanism is just a charge.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's another building around the corner there. Um, it's pretty quiet. There's nothing. There's not like an artwork to it. It's just sort of recreating a space that feels very familiar to me. Um, if you turn
Around the
right,
corner.
walk in, like go through the wall again. I think yeah, there it is.
Ooh, this old brick kind of ruin building with a bunch of vines growing through it. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's called a Rajbari. It's like the king's house, and there's one near where I live now that's all decaying. And if you walk inside, then I try to make it feel like another sort of a space with, I think maybe walking in a little further. Um,
Oh, I see.
yeah,
Yeah,
to
we
try to
have
make
these
it
like
feel like one of these abandoned spaces.
yeah, there's a ruined staircase that's partially just broken off and all of this decaying plaster and these big white glowing arched windows with this nice kind of inlaid glass at the top. It's kind of almost like an Art Deco pattern. And there's like a barred door that we're facing now with this like faded blue paint.
But as far as I can remember, I think that was, other than that building at the very beginning of our tour, that was my rooftop. Besides that, I think that's just about everything. Yeah, if you go inside of there, um,
Ah, so there's your bed and window, and I see, is that, oh, that's like light coming through some kind of like burlap type material. It almost looked like a cityscape. Ah, you're feeding a pigeon.
yeah, Charlie Chicken.
Oh,
Um, he used to come into my dining room and eat out of my hand.
that's so
And
cute.
yeah, there's a grass hut that I stayed in nearby, and that's what the walls are. And then the
Hmm.
bed was a hotel room that I stayed at. I have a series of work called Places I Slept. And that was when I was living out of my car and crossing the American landscape. And then I just started photographing then places I slept in India, sort of like a separate project, but kind of inspired by that earlier Places I Slept series that I had. And then just a hidden Easter egg, you could go up into the attic and there's like a box Christmas tree. But
Oh, that's funny.
but yeah, that's somebody was looking for that forever. They never did find it.
What's this audio here?
I
I
can't
turned
remember
off.
what that audio is. Oh, just natural sound. It's at night. I
It's
think I
a
recorded
nice
that off
sound.
my back balcony, maybe.
It's a nice sound to end with. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you want to speak to?
No, that was quite thorough. I think we went to every major space. There may be maybe a couple of hidden things here and there, but I can't even remember what I've turned on or clicked off, moved around. And I guarantee tonight I'm gonna have wild dreams because this really pulls together so much information in such an unusual way. I think it activates something in my brain.
Well, tell me about the dreams. I'm going to stop
I
recording
will.
now.
I'll follow up.